If you've ever wanted to know what a mashup of Jenga and Tetris would look like, you need not look any further at all. Trenga Unlimited does just that as a 1 to 4 player multiplayer and single player story mode experience that you can take out on console and PC. The game, when I first played it, struck me with just how familiar it feels, whilst also feeling inventive and new and fresh as well. And that's quite difficult to do. And it's because it's taking elements of Jenga and Tetris and not really moving them far from the tree, but doing new things with it. You play, and I'll speak of single player mode first, as this character called Kate, who is swimming underwater as you do. Every level basically gives you a ever rising and growing Jenga collection of blocks for you to clear. And unlike Tetris, where you're just looking at one side, you've got to look at all 4 sides of this Jenga pot and then choose which of the 3 blocks that you've got on the bottom of the screen to pick up, rotate or mirror around and slot perfectly into place where you can. In doing so, you'll get a score bonus, but also an oxygen bonus, which is essentially time. And so every time you kind of slot something into place, you gain more time and you can keep going and stay alive. How do you clear lines on this game though? Well, you do that by having the line work across all 4 surfaces of your Jenga block. So essentially you need to create a 16 block deep layer, if that makes sense. And then once you've done that, it clears out, and then everything that's on top of it crashes down one, which can sometimes create new and interesting holes for you to fill with the blocks that you've got. The blocks are your standard ones. So you've got your squares, your L shapes, your T shapes, your long eyes, but you've also got like a little 3 one for a corner, a plus sign or a cross, I guess you could kind of say as well, and also a single block. But the key to Trenga Unlimited is that there is no 2 block, if that makes sense. I know there's a lot of blocks that I'm talking about. But so what you need to do, when you notice that, is that you don't want to edge yourself into weird and wonderful places that you're then struggling to fill. Because if you place in a block over something that doesn't fit perfectly, you take an oxygen and a score hit for doing so, and game is over for the level that you play when you run out of oxygen. So you sometimes you take your chances because you're right at the end of the level and you just think, oh come on, spam it and get it in, and you've completed the level. But you don't want to do it too often because it will leave you in trouble later on down the line. Similarly, on the later levels in story mode, there's a bit of a juggle going on between when you want to clear blocks and clear lines because it gives you a big boost of oxygen, and trying to clear them kind of periodically to keep you in the game, and there's a little bit of strategy there. Later on in story mode as well, it's not just normal blocks that you get. There are bomb blocks that you need to kind of defuse, otherwise they take out and make large chunks of things that you've already worked to fill to redo again. There's ice blocks that require clearing twice, and they're a pain in the bum. And you've also got glass blocks as well, which act like normal blocks, but you can kind of lay over the top of them. So if you can kind of get something to fit perfectly and fit around the glass block, great. But if not, you can kind of smash something in over the top of it as well, and that works just fine. As you're going through all of this, you're unlocking these different animal characters, which you can then take as like subtle power-ups into multiplayer mode. And these are things like multipliers or bonuses for scores, or it will let you get away with an imperfect move perfectly every 17 or 21 seconds. When you get into the multiplayer mode though, it is all hands on deck. You don't necessarily like, say, Tetris games or Puyo Puyo Pop or anything else that's block-based. It's not about kind of making lines and then passing over your to someone else that causes them issues. This is about going as fast and efficiently as possible to build the highest score in a time period. So you'll constantly be trying to clear lines and get rid of your Jenga block, but if you do that, you just get a new one. And you keep going until you've run out of time and see who's got the best score. Works really well for 1 to 4 players. You do all kind of have to know what you're doing to a degree for this to work out quite nicely. But because you're constantly having to rotate around, you've got to mirror things, sometimes you've got to rotate the block that you're moving to get it into position. It can everyone has to kind of pause and think for a second before you kind of make those moves. If I was to have 2 minor niggles for Trenga Unlimited, and they are very minor because I thoroughly enjoyed this game. The first one is the voice acting. All of the characters have funny voices, and it's funny for a while, especially on the menu when they're going yeah all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But because whenever you place a block in, it says Trenga, Ultra Trenga, Mega Trenga all the time. It gets quite old quite quickly. No matter how many different voices that you've got going on, and they all compete for each other. The second one is more of a kind of viewpoint issue, and that's that sometimes, especially when your Jenga block is big and the blocks therefore are slightly smaller, I was struggling sometimes to line up stuff at the very bottom and the very top of my block of blocks. And that's because it kind of gives you a slightly false 3D perspective as you move to the edges of your tower of blocks. And so sometimes I thought I was lined up with what I thought was the bottom, but actually I wasn't. I was one up. And then because obviously everything is so precise in this game, that meant that I had an imperfect hit, I lost oxygen, I lost points, and I did have 1 or 2 game overs from that, and quite a lot of groans when I'd got it wrong. It does give you like an illumination on the back, and to try and combat this, actually, when you've got a perfect run of a block, it kind of pops out big and bold and yellow. So it does give you plenty of signals in that, but when you're in the heat of battle, sometimes you just kind of go, ah, and it feels like it's an issue with the viewpoint of the game, not necessarily me getting overexcited and trying to smash down blocks before I should be. However, for the price point, for what's here on offer, the production values, I can't fault Trenga Unlimited for being brave and interesting with putting a proper twist on Jenga and Tetris and coming up with something entirely new. Puzzle fiends, I think you will lap this up. Go grab, go grab, go grab. It's a thumbs up from me. A written review will be over on higherplanegames.com. Until then, you guys take care. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.